Good morning, and welcome to heaven. I didn't know it would be filled with this many construction yards. Neon White released last year, and I'm honestly really sad that I first got around to playing it now. The idea is incredibly simple. You play as a guy that has died and gone to heaven, but there's a catch. Because he was a bad guy in life, he has to kill demons that invade heaven to be allowed to stay. So every level boils down to kill each demon in the level and get to the exit. Sounds pretty simple, and maybe even a little boring. But they added a really crazy bit to the game, something incredibly radical and game-changing. A timer. Wait, that's it? Let me tell you, the timer is the main hook for this game. It's what ties it all together. I won't lie, most of the levels in the game are pretty easy to beat. A large portion of them I even beat on my first attempt. But that's not the challenge of the game. Beating each level within a certain time limit rewards you with a little medal, going from bronze, silver, gold, to platinum. And what do you do when you beat a level and you see that bronze medal staring you in the face? You feel insulted, maybe even a little sick. So you restart that level, over and over, getting a dopamine rush every time you improve your time. Slowly but surely, your aim, reaction time, and movement improves. Oh yeah, movement is something I should talk about, I guess. In this game, you got guns that are shown as these little cards, like your standard pistol, SMG, shotgun, etc. You pick them up throughout each level, and you can only hold two at once. Simple enough. But these weapons have a little trick up their sleeve. You can discard them to use little movement abilities based on the weapon card discarded. The pistol gives you an extra jump, effectively allowing you to double jump. The sniper gives you a dash that you can use to go through barriers with, and so on. At this point, your brain should start activating. No longer do you see every level as a makeshift aim labs course, but instead a puzzle game. You go through the level not only figuring out what weapons to use and what to waste your bullets on, but also where to make the most of the movement ability of each weapon. New shortcuts open as you realize you can cut corners, jump over walls, and find entirely new paths. Here's an example from one of the earlier levels. Normally, you would shoot the yellow demon here, grab his elevate card, jump up to the water, and run around the edge here. Instead, what you can do is shoot the demon without dropping down and using the elevate to jump up to this platform behind you instead. This saves you from having to run all the way around the level, allowing you to shave several seconds off of your time. Tons of these little shortcuts are spread through every level, and it's up to you to discover them. So, you find the shortcuts, you have your route. Now, you just gotta start grinding. Start doing the level over and over and over until you hit that magic run where you hit every shot, you never miss a jump, and you get that platinum medal, and finally, it's time to move on. But there's actually a fifth secret tier of medal that the game doesn't tell you about. These are the dev times. They're kinda like author times from Trackmania. These are pretty damn difficult, and that's what makes them so wonderful. You get a great time with a big improvement, but you're still stuck with just a platinum medal, wondering how in the world that could be done any faster. So you go back in, over and over. This is what I was talking about earlier. The grind for perfection is addicting. Some of these are pretty tricky to figure out too. Here's a good example. One of the boss fights, you normally have to wait until certain parts of a chase sequence to be able to damage the boss. But interestingly enough, you can actually get some chip damage in while the boss is moving throughout the level. You're supposed to chase him all the way to the top and kill him there in the final stage, but with enough damage spread throughout the entire chase sequence through that little bit of chip damage, you can actually kill him halfway up the tower, saving around 30 seconds in a single level. You get these magic moments where it all just clicks and you just visualize the path in your head. You start to feel like you're a wizard, and that honestly is great. Almost all of these skips are carefully planned by the devs, but it doesn't dilute the excitement because you still feel as a player that you just discovered something great on your own. When it comes to playtime, according to how long to beat, it takes roughly 23 hours to beat the entire thing. But I'm fairly confident if you just wanted to beat each level once without trying to improve your times, you could probably beat the game in much less. So how in the world did it take 70 hours for me to beat the game on my first casual playthrough? Because of this little feature over here. This might be a strange sight to some, but this is a friends list, where you can see the time that people on your Steam friends got on each level. I probably spent more than an hour on many levels trying to beat my friends. Annoyingly enough, some of my friends had actively been speedrunning the game, so their times were honestly really hard to beat. But that didn't dissuade me. I would not let myself be dissuaded by these fools. I will figure out their routes and I will beat them at their own game. This is where all those extra hours of playtime came from when I first played the game. If you had told me I would spend hours in a tiny level with 10 enemies in my first playthrough of a game, I would have called you mad. But now I see the truth, and the truth is to grind. Eventually I beat the whole thing. Beat all the dev times, beat a whole bunch of my friends' times, and even got all the collectibles that you can find. Game is done, right? Well, not quite. As a final curveball, the game introduces this thing called Heaven Rush. This is essentially a challenge of going through every single level in the game as fast as possible. All those things you learned from each level is now being put to the test. Do you remember each skip? Where to jump? Where to save ammo? What enemy to shoot when? You now had to do all those things in one continuous run. I only had one problem when I started my first attempt. I couldn't remember a thing about many of the levels. My entire first playthrough was done over the course of about 3 months. In that time, I moved into a new apartment across the country, I got a new job, new responsibilities, the whole shebang. For some of the levels, it had been actual months since the last time I saw them. But I wanted to shoot my shot regardless, so I jumped in and started my first Heaven Rush. I could immediately tell that some of these levels were a complete blur for me. I would load into the level, the environment rings a bell in the back of my head, but I couldn't quite remember what the best path was. Or even worse, I did remember the path, but I just couldn't pull it off because you had to do some really tricky movement that I just couldn't remember how to do anymore. An important note about Heaven Rush is that it counts the entire time you're playing, including each failed attempt of a level. Fall off the map or get shot by an enemy? Sorry, you just lost 10 to 20 seconds and have to do that level all over again. In some of the later boss fights, you can lose upwards of a minute on a failed try. Suddenly, you have to start thinking about how can you save a failed attempt rather than having to redo the entire level. After all, it's still faster to save a sloppy attempt and lose 4 seconds than redoing the level from the beginning and losing 4 times as much. My first time for a full run was not great, an hour and 20 minutes. Most of the mistakes were not even from doing suboptimal routes, but instead having to reload the same level over and over. I became obsessed with trying to perfect each level rather than just taking a mediocre time on each level and moving on. That's something you realize about the Heaven Rush. It's not about perfecting every minor level, but just getting them over with and moving on to the next. If you make a mistake, you should just take the L and move on. Armed with my new knowledge, I jumped back in and managed to squeeze out a decent time, coming in at 49 minutes and 25 seconds. Sadly, I forgot to record this run, but generally it was missing a lot of optimizations in many levels, especially the later levels. So I tried to sit for a few hours on my stream and do some practice sessions. And let me tell you, I hate practicing, but it did pay off. I completed another run and shaved off roughly a whopping single minute. Well, at least it's an improvement. After several additional practice sessions, I did one final run attempt for that evening. Oh hey, even with live sprint running this time. Things were going a lot better, and I could easily tell that the practice was paying off. This time, I came in at a solid 45 minutes and 28 seconds. I was really happy with this time, so I didn't think to spend a lot more time with the game, and most likely move on to other things. However, around this time, several of my friends were starting to prepare for an annual speedrun marathon called Hackathon. If you've ever seen an SGDQ, AGDQ, or their European counterpart, ESA, then you'll know what it's all about. It's a live streamed event where a lot of people show off many different speedruns and fun games, which then collect money for charity. Hackathon specifically is much smaller than the previously mentioned ones, so generally a lot less people show up, but that also makes the atmosphere a lot more chill. The organizers had asked for people to submit as many games as they could, so they got me thinking, hey, I could submit Neon White to that, so I did. Now my friends, the clock is ticking. I only have a few months left to learn, practice, and just all around get better at Neon White, so I can put on the best showcase I possibly can to make my fellow speedrunners proud. My friends, I must bid you farewell now. I have a run to grind.